Okay, I warned you. One drip and you're out.
Oh, come on!
Out now.
It's gonna melt outside.
It's melting inside, too.
But, Bobby...
Out.
Thank you very much.
You're not welcome! The man who lives in here gets arrested a lot. These are the rooms we're not supposed to go in. But let's go anyway. Could you give us some change, please? The doctor said we have asthma and we gotta eat ice cream right away.
Here you go.
Haley, we got a situation here. Open up.
It's only second week of the summer and there's already been a dead fish in the pool.
We're trying to get it back alive.
Water balloons thrown at tourists.
Boobies! Boobies!
I failed as a mother, Moonee.
Yeah, Mom, you're a disgrace.
New job?
Yeah.
If you're working, who's looking after Moonee?
You're not my father.
I don't want to be your
You
father.
can't treat me like this.
You don't think everybody knows what's up, Halley? Everybody.
She's about to cry. I can always tell when adults are about to cry. Why is my mom yelling?
They're just talking. They got to figure something out.
See, I took you on a safari. Whoa. Let's go, come on.
Have a nice day.
Love you, Bobby!
I love you, too.
And he's here talking about what I think is one of the most beautiful and one of the best films of the year. It's a truly incredible work. Congratulations
Great.
on the film.
Thanks. Thank you.
Sean Baker, who made the film, is a filmmaker that I admire and love, and this is just something so special. So let's go back to the beginning. How did this get presented to you? What did they tell you?
You know, there's no special story at the beginning. I simply, a script arrived. I was aware of Sean because I had seen his film Tangerine, which was a very interesting, strong film, shot on an iPhone, famously. So he was on my radar from that. So he was a filmmaker I was interested in. Beautiful script. Then I met with him. He told me how he was going to make the film. And I felt excited, and so I agreed to do it, yeah.
What did that consist of, that sort of telling you how he was going to make it?
Well, it just to familiarize me with his process and how he makes things. And one of the things that he does that is quite particular to him is he likes, for example, in casting, he mixes actors with, you know, people, street casting. For example, one of the main characters in this film, he found on Instagram, and she's fantastic. He mixes, you know, people that are living at location, in this case, with actors, new actors, older actors, and I knew that was going to be a dynamic. Also, I knew we were going to film at an actual working motel, which is the location of an important character in the story, and I was going to play the manager of that motel. So I knew I had very tangible things to do in a real environment, and I knew the reality of that would inform what we were doing, the story we were telling.
Had you worked like that before in terms of mixing non-professional with professional actors on a set before?
To some degree, it always happens, but not to this degree. Yeah. And it, for me, I love it because one of the things that you do as an actor, there are some films, you know, you can show a performance and that's kind of part of it. Those are usually, the performance style is very artificial and which isn't always a bad thing, but you're aware of them being actors. But most of the time, you're in movies where you want to disappear. You want to become a part of the fabric of the story. And in this case, my biggest job was to fit in with the real people, fit in with the real place, you know, really pass in a kind of non-actor performance. You don't want to smell the whiff of an actor performing in this. You want to feel like you're watching people. That's true with a lot of movies, but particularly this one.
Especially on this set, in terms of in tribute to the people that this film is about.
They're there. We're living. What I don't know whether it's expressed in the trailer, probably not explicitly, but these are motels where people who don't have a permanent residence are living temporarily, but for long term. Some of them for years, and their families living in one room. So it's kind of after a financial crisis and the housing crash.
It really took off in Florida after the housing market crash.
Yeah,
I believe,
and
right?
it's everywhere. It's not just Florida. And we had a similar thing in maybe the 80s in New York with SROs, where they were taking people that didn't have homes and putting them in SROs. But the reason is people can't, find a place to rent, a place where they can, come up with the security deposit and that sort of thing. So they live day to day at these budget tourist hotels, and of course, it's the juxtaposition, their proximity to this center of entertainment and amusement that's known throughout the world, has particular resonance to see those two worlds next to each other.
Yeah, right in the shadows of like a great image of American capitalism and entertainment are these people
And diversion, people that are struggling.
So when you get on set and you get to Florida, do you start doing your own research and meeting people?
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of practical. You have to know that world. I didn't know this world existed. And I think that's one of the important things about the film, that actually, talking to you before, that you mentioned, it's very unusual to have a movie about working class people and people that struggle. Without having it be a downer or having it
Some
be
sort of Capra-esque kind of ending,
Yeah, or a finger wagging kind of just statement. It's not that. This is a very humanist view. It's a view about people and how we react to each other and what our responsibility is to each other. And I think that's something that's very important to have right now. And I think people have a hunger for that. That contact, because we get bombarded by so much stuff, but it's usually from cool sources. We need a little warmth, we need a little contact, we need a little exchange.
Yeah, I hope people have a hunger for that as well, not just for working class stories, but for non-judgmental stories that embrace the sort of the beauty of living with the good and the bad.
Yep. And that's also the pleasure with the characters, because they're complex characters, because, for example, my character has to deal with people, in very different ways, because he wears a lot of different hats, because he's part protector, he's part surrogate father to the children, he's part policeman, because he's, got to keep order, he's part, money collector, because he's dogging them for the rent. There's all these different modes that he's dealing with these people, and these are his people, because he's not so much unlike them, because he lives at the motel as well.
And there's also there's only so much he can do, which is one of the sort of the great things about the movie. He knows that. He knows that,
but at the same time, he's a and I took this a lot from the people that I met that have this job in life, of these motel managers of motels like this. The one thing that I noticed was they all had a pride in their job. And even though they were sort of normal working class people with a regular job, and they were just a couple of paychecks away from a precarious life, he always wanted to make things better. He had a pride in the fact that I'm going to make, okay, this motel's a little funky, but I'm going to make it better. I'm going to make it better for the people. There was a real pride in that, and I think that's real. I saw it in these people, and I tried to bring a little bit of that to the character of Bobby, a guy that's not maybe exceptional. You're not like, you don't have big dramatic scenes, or there's not a big transformation, there's not a big bells and whistles. He's kind of a normal guy, but the way he engages with people, I thought was was interesting.
Talk about calibrating your performance, because you say there aren't any big dramatic scenes. I would argue there are big dramatic scenes, but
Okay.
I would say the way that you handle them is not in your sort of classic big, not your classic big dramatic way, but the classic
yeah.
big dramatic way. You are, the task of this job is to be as sort of subtle and real as possible.
You know what? I'm not going to say that anymore. You're absolutely right, because it is true. It is true.
So how do you calibrate
Thanks.
your? Yeah, of course. I'm trying to promote the movie here. Huge dramatic scenes, guys.
You
Huge
know,
drama.
you promote a movie, you try to be thoughtful in every interview, particularly when you sincerely like the movie. But then, if you do a lot of promoting, you get talking points, and you start to believe some of them, and you just blew away one of my talking points.
I'm sorry.
No, it's good. I'm going to reshape it now.
But I guess the question is, how do you calibrate your performance when you're going about big dramatic scenes, but the tone of the film is not one of the sort of classic big drama. It's sort of underplaying as much as possible.
you're not thinking of that. You're really living in the world, and we were a small company, and we were in a real situation. So it was a life reality. It wasn't a movie reality. And particularly with the kids, Brooklyn has worked before, the girl, Moonee, but some of the other kids had never performed before. So, and they were naturally performers, the way kids can be when they feel free. But Sean set it up that what they were doing always felt a little bit like play. There was a strong script. They had to memorize lines sometimes, not a lot, but the way he set the situations up, it was all play, and we were making something. And I guess the adults, the scenes were no different in the respect that I was just trying to accomplish what I was trying to accomplish as that motel manager. And I was trying to serve the film. I was trying to serve the community, because that's the way it's built. And I'm not even conscious of notes I have to hit. I get there in that place, I try to solve the problem. I have very concrete tasks in this. And that's nice, because you try to do them, and then there's pushback, and then you try to find another way to do them. And it's all sort of practical. I don't know what the result of a scene is going to be. I only know what I think has to be accomplished in the narrative of the movie in character. Yeah. You know what I mean? So sometimes the more dramatic scenes are ones you're surprised, because the scenes work themselves out. You really don't know where you're going to end up in a scene sometimes. Sean knows that because he has a little distance, but me, when I'm performing it, I don't have that so much.
You bring up such an interesting point about your character, and I think the film is seemingly so effortless in a lot of ways. You forget that your character is actually this thing that goes around and creates conflict and plot for everybody in a lot of ways.
Well, I'm not thinking about that, of course.
You just made me think,
Yeah.
oh, of course, everybody's kind of hanging around, but your character is the one that's like, the money is needed, this needs to go away, this person can't be here, this needs to happen.
Well, I'm, looking at another way, I'm like the levels of the outer world, visiting these people in their homes, because I'm the connection to the outside world, to the responsibilities, the pressures, sometimes the pleasures of the outside world, because they're all living in their little worlds. They're interacting with each other some, but mostly they're in their little kingdoms in these one-room apartments, making the best they can of a situation where there's a single mother living with 3 kids in one little room, sleeping in the same bed.
A grandmother at times. And,
Yeah.
What's it like?
Cooking in the room, they're shopping. They're limited to what they can cook. Sometimes they can't cook. It's this kind of lifestyle. No stability. It's difficult, and they pay. They pay in a lot of ways. And they have to figure it out, and sometimes figuring out involves some grift and some scam and some illegal things, and it's challenging. But you're with them, and you understand how that happens, and you understand you start to see a cycle without judgment, but something that really exists.
What's it like for you to play? I hesitate to use the word like a warm character. I think Bobby is a very warm character. I think he is. I think the movie's very realistic though, so he doesn't come off as like a cliche in any way whatsoever. But he's a warm character, I think, compared to what. And I've seen you play warm characters as well. I mean,
thank you.
You were Jesus Christ at one point. But I think you are thought of, or for lack of a better word, typecast as psychos or something like that, which you do wonderfully.
I enjoy that sometimes.
Yeah, you play a wonderful psycho. But what's it like to get a script like this and get the chance to play a character like this and have a filmmaker say, "I know that you do this as well and you do it really well"?
He doesn't say that to me because he knows film, and he knows that I do different kinds of things, and I'm not thinking about that. It's the classic thing, and that an actor, when you play a character, you want to give them depth, you want to give them dimension. So, you may recognize what their function is broadly as a bad guy or a villain, or he's outside the story, or he represents trouble, but you're also trying to develop the other side. Classically, if a character is perceived as bad, you got to give him his day in court. You got to give him this good side so he can be a whole person. Because, what's good to some people is bad to other people. We got to be careful about these judgments. And I think if you're really going to show people and not just one-dimensional characters, I'm used to trying to develop, not think of them as bad characters or good characters. So it's a long-winded answer to basically, when I'm approaching Bobby, I don't know that. I just know I'm going to find out who he is. I'm going to find out who he is by playing the scenes, and I don't say, "Oh, good, here I have a warm character to play." I'm not even conscious of that. I really am not. I'm aware that he's not necessarily a bad guy, but he has to do some tough things. I don't know how it's going to go down. So, in retrospect, people in seeing this movie have commented, like you, that, wow, a compassionate, warm character. Well, who would have known?
Like I said, I've seen you play compassionate, warm characers before, but
no, I get it. I get it. But
yeah.
You seem to have a good film knowledge.
Try.
Where sometimes people that are more used to maybe a handful of films that I've done, if they happen to be a handful of films where I played what are perceived as negative characters, then they'll say, "Wow, you're always the bad guy." I don't perceive it that way. And even in sometimes in movies where someone might perceive you as a bad guy, I don't perceive it as a bad guy because I'm trying to identify with the guy. I'm trying to elevate him. I'm not trying to not judge him. I'm trying to give him a chance,
What did you think when after the first screening of the Florida Project? Because
what did I think?
Yeah.
It's always difficult to watch a movie because your associations to the making of the movie are always so strong. And
I bet you have very specific associations to this, considering the set was so. No.
Yeah. And well, I could see this. I still can't see it right away. It takes repeated viewings to really start to see it as a viewer. But I was quite moved by it.
It's just I think it's a rarity that you get to be a part of good movies, you get to be part of great movies, but I do think that there is something quite special about what he accomplished with this film.
Sean is a great filmmaker, and I think this is, things came together on this. I mean, you don't say you're happy with something, but I mean, I think this movie expresses something in the air and is special for me.
Absolutely. Have you guys shown it? Has it been shown at all to anybody around the hotel or anything like that?
They're going down to Florida to promote it soon, so I imagine there will be such things. I mean, some of the people that were living in the motel ended up being extras. Yeah. And also, like, sometimes I'd be doing a scene in the office and people would come to check in. And it was like, "Hey, can you wait a second? Wait a couple of minutes before."
Did you ever check anybody in?
No. I know how. I know how.
You're like, I got this, Cheryl. Hold on a second.
No, yeah, exactly. It was like, shift's over, I'd go in, they'd go out,
Well, it's great. I mean,
And they were very generous with us. And somehow they appreciated we were, they were generous, and they were helping us tell the story.
Everyone says there's no difference between a major budget movie and a low budget movie outside of, I think, the food is usually the joke that people say, right? But you are literally going from the Florida Project to Aquaman.
Yeah.
Which is going from a low budget indie to the biggest budget possible, I think, for the most part.
Well, pretty up there.
Out there, yeah. Is it just the food, or is there a completely different feeling and approach to how you handle scenes and how much time you have and all that?
Your job is different. With every movie, your job is different, and the intention of the movie is different, and how it's made is different. I mean, there's so many differences between these two movies, and for me, I like to go between them, because, it's like a balanced diet, and also it also allows you to exercise different muscles, because if you keep on going to the same place, for your imagination, for your inspiration, it gets old, you get conditioned. And the trick is, it's the trick in life, is to beat conditioned response all the time, because that deadens your response to living. Well, it's similar with performing, you want to mix it up. You always want to be in a place where you kind of say, how does this go? For it not to be familiar, to re-enter it and make each time as special as you can. So when you say to compare these two, I could, but you've got an imagination. I can't, I could go on and on about the differences, but it's all making things, it's all pretending, it's all getting with a group of people and trying to make something. The dynamics are different, the economics are different, the time is different, and they're different kinds of movies. They serve a different function. They have a different intention.
What do you think the reason for the title, The Florida Project, is?
The Florida Project. It's very clear, actually. The Florida Project was the name that when Disney was buying up property to make Disney World, they wanted to keep it secret for a little while, or I'm not even sure that, but the name of the whole project of developing Disney World was the Florida Project. And this motel is very close to where Disney World and some other amusement parks are in Central Florida. So that's what it comes from.
Love it. Let's get some questions from the audience. Who has a question? Right here, right there.
Hi, Mrs. Dafoe.
Hi.
Great having you here.
Great.
I was wondering, was it more challenging getting to do these dramatic type of roles as opposed to like when you're doing like your, like your more famous roles, like the psychiatric ones? Or
I'm not sure I understand. Absolutely.
Was it more challenging doing a role like this? Yeah.
I don't know, because it doesn't help me to compare. I wish I could tell you. I can't say this is any more or less challenging. The challenges shift around. With each project, the strengths are different, the weaknesses are different, and each time you've got to figure it out. And this one, because it was a good experience, I have a hard time saying it was challenging, because I was with good people that I felt some kind of communion with, and we made something, and something, I was changed by it. Because, as I said, I didn't know this world existed. And I learned about that world, and these people became my people for a while. And when you learn something like that, it opens you up in a way that makes you a little kinder, a little more flexible, makes you think better, gives you a bigger heart. And I think that's kind of the function of movies, to challenge, the routines that we're stuck in the routine thinking. It opens your mind to consider different perspectives. So, challenging? No, it was pure pleasure. I had fun, The challenge is just, it's all there. You just got to get to it, So it's about removing any blocks you have to let that stuff flow when the conditions are right. And these conditions, for me anyway, for my taste, for my interests, was right. Thanks.
Next question, right here.
Hi. So I saw the film yesterday at the New York Film Festival, and at least like during the Q&A, the kids seemed to have developed a real friendship. Did you get to spend time with the cast before or like during or between takes and like?
Not so much before, but yes, when you're a small company, you help each other, and like any movie, there's lots of hanging out, and there were like no trailers. It's not like you went on set and then went to your trailer. My trailer was one of the rooms in the motel. I'd get in the morning, you'd say hello to everybody, you'd say hello to the crew, you'd say hello to the people living there, the real people. You'd go to your room, you'd change your clothes, I'd get my, keys, I'd go, I'd say hi to everybody, have a little coffee with them, and you'd start to work. It was a kind of seamless thing. So, yes, there's always a feeling of you're creating a community for a project, for a moment. But this ran deeper because for a lot of these people, it was their first time. So they had nothing to compare it to, and they had no kind of cynical distance because it's another movie in their career or this kind of thing. This was exciting for them, and they were meeting people with a special energy and a special openness. So once we got working, yeah, I got close with these people, particularly the kids, because they want to perform for you. They're needy, they're excited, they're energetic. That's all happening. And to make things go smooth, and because they're sweet kids, you go with it. So I'm close with them.
Did you feel the need to sort of take on a Bobby-like responsibility with the kids
It's
off
natural.
camera? Yeah.
It's natural, and it's natural because everything is set up that way. And also, Sean Baker, I'm there to help him too. So Bobby is an instrument of help to keep the fictional motel running. You know what I mean? So it's a
Director able to do stuff.
Yeah, it's always beautiful when you can get a situation that informs or mirrors the situation in the story you're telling, because then the distance between real life and the fiction you're doing starts to get a little, it gets flexible and flimsy, and you don't feel the stress of making stuff. You're living a life.
You can also start finding stuff that way as well. You can kind of like, hey, Sean, the kids just did this. We should probably try to get this kid.
Oh, absolutely. And even though there was a very strong script for this, I say even though, because Sean likes to depart from it. And when things happen, you saw the movie yesterday, when birds show up on the parking lot, and they won't leave, he's like, let's get a camera out there with Willem and do something with them. He because it was something special. When I say birds, I mean these big like ibis creatures.
I was wondering about that when I saw the film and that scene happened, because it's like, oh, this is something that happened and they got him out there and they did this, but it's also appearing at this pivotal moment in the movie where it has just such a resonance in that moment for your character and what's about to happen.
It's true. You see that, and it just feels like an event. It's something that happened, and you don't know how it's going to be used, and it's not really in your idea of how to develop the narrative, but it brings together things that are happening in a way that when you find a place for it, you're right. It resonates. It's like better than being written, better than it happened to you. Marcus Aurelius or something. It loved to happen. We're capturing that.
Can you talk about the scene without giving anything away when a stranger visits the hotel?
That's tough not to give that away, but
okay, yeah, no, that's fair enough. I love that scene. I love the handling of it and how your character dealt with it.
That's a nice scene, and that's a good combination of being written, but also having to vamp, because if you haven't seen the movie, maybe this is getting too out there, but the length from where the kids are to the soda machine was very far.
Really?
And we didn't want to cut into the scene, so we had to vamp for a little while to get the guy from there to there. Anyway, these kids, a lot of them that are living in the story and in life at this motel are, you know, they have a lot, they're on their own a lot because single mothers, she's either working or she's doing things. And these kids run around and they're very vulnerable because they're basically unsupervised. So you can imagine that a bunch of kids hanging out, looking for friends, looking for money for ice cream, looking for adventure and love, you know, and security, they can easily be preyed on. So one of the things when I talk to the guys that were working at the place is one of the parts of his job, and you wouldn't think this, is a kind of security for the children because they are vulnerable and sometimes people come around.
So you had guys actually
So
tell you...
I'll keep that very vague, not saying the movie, and the movie's not about that, but that's
No,
one
no,
aspect.
it's not about that.
Not at all.
But you had guys tell you stories
That
about
this
that.
happens. We didn't invent this. Wow. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
I think we have time for one more question right here.
Hi, Mr.
Hi,
Dafoe.
how are you?
You have such a robust resume, and I'm curious, early on in your career, was there a particular moment where you thought, like, this was your big break, or where things really started to move for you? Or
To live and die in L.A.
Okay. Actually, that's a pretty... Thank you for that answer.
my
Can I
absolute favorite action movie of all time.
Can I bring you on my press stuff? I was going to say you can't because one thing leads to the next, and even sometimes your failures point you to successes through the back door. But, okay, let's say, no, that's a pretty good answer. To live and, I mean, they were all, each film is important because they're part of the puzzle. But to live and die in L.A., early in my career, that's like 83 or something like that, I had made some movies. You could say the most important is the first one. This wasn't the first one.
The Loveless, right?
The Loveless.
The
Very
Catherine
good.
Bigelow's
He
directorial
knows
debut.
his films, guys. Listen to him.
Loveless is so cool. It's Scorpio Rising, but a feature film. It's so cool.
We can be friends.
I did it. I did it.
Okay, let's stick. I could go all around because I don't think about this, but it's a good question. To Live and Die in L.A., I will say that movie probably was responsible for me being cast in Platoon and also, strangely enough, Last Temptation of Christ. It was a filmmaker's movie. When it opened, it was actually not a success. It was just for lots of reasons, but it wasn't a big success. But it continued to always be a favorite or admired by filmmakers. And in the case of Oliver Stone and Martin Scorsese, both of them knew of me from that movie, and that's why they cast me. And Platoon and Last Temptation of Christ were two very important roles for me early in my career.
Well, that's so interesting that that To Live and Die in L.A., that character would lead to these sort of Christ-like, one actual Christ, but Platoon is a Christ-like figure as well that you play in that movie.
It's true, but when you think about it, forget that character of Eric Masters. I forget how bad he is, but also think about his relationship to his work, right, and to the impermanence of things. He was very zen. He happened to be a criminal, and he happened to be a counterfeiter, and he does kill people. But let's put that aside.
Buddy, you're in the wrong place at the wrong time.
He was philosophical. He was spiritual.
I love that take on Eric Masters.
No, but
I never thought of that.
No, misdirected in his behavior. But when you think about it, his way of dealing things, I mean, it was a perversion of you know, a moral man. But he did think about these things, and he was philosophical, and he was thoughtful, and he was spiritual. He was interested in things beyond what's here or what's visible. So maybe that's the reason. I don't know.
Willem, I have to let you go. Again, I love this film so much. I think it's maybe the best of the year. It's a really important, really beautiful, really entertaining movie, and another great performance by you. When can people see the Florida Project? When does it open?
It opens, I don't know the exact dates, but it's a platform release, which means it opens at maybe 4 theaters like early in October, I think October 6th or something like that. And then it gently rolls out if things go well. And by October the end of October. It should be nationwide.
I think we're going to see this appear in the awards race later this year or next year. I hate to sort of, categorize movies that way, but it's a beautiful film, an incredible piece of work. Willem Dafoe, everybody,
Great.
give it up.
Thank you. Thanks.